Hi, I'm Pax. I'm the founder and editor of Queer Toronto Literary Magazine. Today, I'm super excited to be sitting down with singer, actor, producer, recording artist, local drag legend, and HIV and AIDS activist, Alphonso King Jr. This is part of Cutie's Black History Month series, profiling Black queer trailblazers in the arts. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming. I'm very excited that you're here with me today.
I'm very honored to be here.
Before we even jump into things, before this started, you were telling me about the background that you're using today. Can you just tell for other people what the background is?
These are actually clubs that no longer exist in New York City, like the Paradise Garage, Studio 54, Danceteria, the Sound Factory. These are all like, and unfortunately for me, the only place I actually got to go was Sound Factory and the Palladium. But the rest of them, they were gone before I even got there.
For someone who might not know you, could you just talk about a little bit about your work as an entertainer and activist in Toronto?
Okay. Let's see. I moved to Toronto at the end of 2009, but most people didn't know that I was here until 2010. I got married to my husband in 2010. When I got here, I guess I sort of kind of had a clean slate because of no one knew who I was. Though I shouldn't say that. There were a couple of people who did know who I was because the first gig I had was at a place called Gladaman's Den, and it was on Yonge Street, and very interesting concept. It was like an Irish pub or a Scottish pub for a gay bar. So yeah, but I started a Vogue night there. So I think people had heard of DJ Relentless and some people had heard of Jade Elektra. So they sort of kind of came out to see who I was and what was going on. And it was a really good night. The only problem was that the ballroom kids, they don't spend money. So, so they were showing up, but they weren't buying drinks or anything like that. And I kept trying to tell them, like, look, y'all, you have to start buying some drinks or something because this isn't going to last.
It's gonna
If it's not,
disappear.
yeah. And of course it didn't. But
I'm
before
very
it
guilty of
ended,
those accusations.
so,
This call out culture.
the night ended, my job there ended, but I ended up on Church Street going to church to George's Play, and I ended up working there, which led to me working at Cruise and Tangos, and then so forth. I've probably worked for all of the bars here in some capacity, either DJing or performing. The activism thing, I didn't intend to be an activist. I had done stuff in New York for GMHC and the Harvey Milk School. I spun for their floats in the parade, the Gay Pride Parade.
DMHD, that was like the first
Yeah.
like AIDS services organization ever, right?
Yeah. And it was really great working with them because of it was different. Like coming here, I really appreciate what it is that they've done in New York because all of it is all in one building. So if it's a Latino group or whatever, that's still in the same building. It all falls under the same umbrella. Here, the AIDS organizations are kind of spread out and they're all, I don't know, in a way, to me, it seems like the Hunger Games. They're all like kind of competing against each other or trying to outdo each other or whatever. And so my goal, what happened was when I got here, my husband took me to an event called Out and Pause. And the first thing I noticed was they weren't out. They were meeting in secret. And I was like, well, that's odd. So I was like, why isn't there?
Counterintuitive to the name.
Yeah. I was like, why isn't there something that's really like out there and in your face or whatever? And so after about a month or two, I was like, I want to start something that's going to be an actual event for HIV positive people where we're not hiding. So I started Pause TO. But once that happened, Club 120, or at that time it was still Good Handies, the Todd, one of the owners, was like, the turnout was really good for this. I want to continue it. What do you want to do? So that's how POSTO started. And
POSTO is a online magazine, right?
no, Pause Planet is an
Sorry,
online
that's
magazine.
Pause
Yeah,
Planet.
my husband started Pause Planet. I think we're going on 14 years ago, or 15 years ago, on Facebook. And he often jokes when he first started, it was just him and a bunch of lesbians there, like no one would join. But now
And
we
look
have.
where we find ourselves, Alfonso.
But a like now we have like over 11,000 people from around the world on the site, on the page, or in the group. And I started the magazine 2 years ago. After Hector Extravaganza died, I wanted to do something to pay tribute to him. And then I wanted to write something, but like I was like, oh, well, no one's going to publish what I'm going to write about it. And then I got other people involved who knew him as well. So that was the first issue. And so then I was like, well, I really want to start telling the story of HIV positive people. My husband did he has a series of artwork that's called HI Vogue. And it looks like it looks like magazine covers. And it's like famous people or people that he knows personally who are HIV positive. And the idea, I think the concept of putting them on the cover of something and making it normal, like just like you would look at a fashion magazine or, gardening magazine or whatever. And so that was the concept behind starting the magazine of Pause Planet. Was I wanted to bring stories of people living with HIV and what they're doing, and not like all success stories of people who are like, thriving or whatever. Some of the stories are actually about people who are going through addiction and how they're dealing and coping. And then, COVID came along, so that's changed a lot of things for a lot of people. So, I've really tried to like extend a view of what HIV positive people, what they look like, and how they're living and what they do, and who's, and the only thing I really ask is that you're out about your status. So, you can hopefully inspire other people to do the same, because my biggest talking point amongst a lot of the things that I'm asked to speak for is that we cannot change anything if we are hiding in the closet. We have to be out. So the same way that gay people had to come out in the 80s or in the 70s, and Harvey Milk said that you have to be out, it's the same way about HIV, because if we're going to ever make things change, get rid of the stigma, make it as normal and common as cancer, that you don't hide that you have cancer, you tell people. And so that's where that came from. I found out I was HIV positive in 1990. I became positive in 89. It took me a little while to get the courage to go get tested. And back then they just had AZT, or you guys say Z up here. I was watching friends die on AZT. So I was like, I'm not taking that. I'm not. And fortunately for me, I wasn't a drug addict, and I didn't drink and all that stuff. So basically I kind of skated until 2005 without meds. Also, I had no health care. So
I always forget that that's a consideration for somebody who's not Canadian. Like, it totally slips my mind that that's the reality for.
Oh, yeah. And then I got the bright idea to get up and move to New York City. So I'm in New York City, no health care. And I'm bouncing from club to club, DJing and trying to do little drag shows or whatever. And that's how I survived most of my years in New York City.
So as you sort of took us through the 90s into early 2000s, but I want to kind of go back.
Okay.
You are a survivor of the AIDS epidemic. What does hearing me say that mean for you?
It is crazy knowing that when I first found out, it was a death sentence. So my plan when I first found out was that I was going to take out this big loan and go do all the things that I wanted to do because I was going to die. And I started writing it all out and plotting what I wanted to go to New York. I wanted to go to Paris. I want, like all of this stuff. I had it in my mindset and started literally writing it out that I was going to do all this stuff. And then I don't know what happened, but I woke up one day and I was like, you're an idiot. You'll probably borrow all this money and be as healthy as a horse, and you'll be in debt for the rest of your life. So just forget it. But what happened was I had basically exhausted all of my work options in Tampa, Florida. I had worked for all of the major bars. The last place that I worked, I was doing really well, and I was making some really good money. I had a really nice apartment, everything. But the owners of the bar were mafia, and they got caught, and they for taxes, and then they found out also that they had murdered people and stuff like that.
Oh.
So it used to be a interracial bar, and they had so many problems and fights that they changed it over to a gay bar, and that place was called BVD's, which was Boys Video and Dance. And I was the resident DJ there, and it was the best opportunity for me because if I had worked in mainly, like I had worked in a lesbian redneck bar called Paradise in Tampa. I worked at a black gay bar called Renee's. So I had this reputation of like being the other DJ. I wasn't one of the main DJs. So this place gave me an opportunity to be the headliner and to show that I had a bigger musical range than what they thought. Because the lesbians leaned more towards, well, back then, more of the R&B, Jack Swing, Bobby Brown, Salt and Pepper, that kind of stuff. I converted that bar. It was a redneck bar
it was a what bar?
It was a redneck bar, a lesbian redneck bar. So they were playing like country music. They had line dancing classes, all that stuff. And I came in and started playing, like the popular music of the day.
Right.
And the lesbians were all about it. And the Saturday nights like grew like really, really big. But the older gay men there hated me. Oh my God, they hated me. So they would complain all the time. And I remember long before they had mashups, I had a Saturday night where I was so fed up with the complaints. And also remember, I was a black DJ going into.
Yeah, let's talk about that more. Let's
Yeah, so that was the other thing. I was breaking a color barrier. The guy who worked there before me, his name was Jimmy Strickland, and the reason they got rid of him was because he was a high energy queen. So all that, like so many men, so little time, that kind of stuff. Playing that for lesbians is not, it's just not their
scene. It didn't land?
Right, it didn't land the way that he was thinking, but he thought he was killing it. So they brought me in, and the lesbians loved it, but the gay men didn't love it. And it was a bunch of older gay men, so they loved all that so many men, so little time stuff. And so, that was the other aspect. No one was like being rude and calling me the N-word to my face, but I could feel the animosity and the hatred behind these complaints. So one Saturday night.
Are you feeling that more from like older white gay men? That kind of like animosity?
Yeah. And which has gone on for like, it's still around today. It's just in different forms. This Saturday night, I was so fed up with it. I stopped the music on a Saturday night, like at 11 o'clock, packed floor, everything. And I got on the microphone and I said, look, it's been brought to my attention that some of you are not happy that I'm DJing here or whatever. And I don't know what made me do it or what made me think of it, but I did an on-the-spot mashup of Push It. I took the instrumental of Push It and laid The Devil Went Down to Georgia on top of it.
That's awesome.
And there was this weird mix of the country people coming out to the floor and the people who knew what Push It was. And from that moment on, it was just kind of like me declaring that I'm not going anywhere. So you can't You can complain as much as you want. It's not going to change. This is the new direction that we're going. And so, you know, actually, I should try that again. I haven't done it since then.
I think it's hilarious that you had such like a positive following in this lesbian bar down south when you and I met at the Beaver when you were DJing. I think that's beautiful.
Well, I mean, I'm a chatterbox. I'll talk to anyone. So, but it was it's been an interesting ride, especially in the gay bar scene, working because of there's an extra pressure on Black DJs working a scene, especially from where I started, because I started DJing in '85. And I wasn't old enough to be in bars, but I had gotten a job. And you have this thing where you know that you have to play the game. You have to play what they're looking for, but you also have to, in order to incorporate and make some changes, you have to go in and start reprogramming and deprogramming them so they understand that this is part of your community too.
Right.
It's not just white gay men. There are Black people, there are Latin people here, and they should be represented too. So most of my career, that's been the thing, is me trying to represent people who haven't been. So be it as a DJ or in what I ended up doing as far as being an activist for HIV people. But I've worked in a lot of places that, like, a lot of people are like, oh my God, I wish I could have spun there, or I wish I could have been a part of that scene. I just wanted to be a part of it. I didn't, you know, it wasn't my plan to be a big name or anything. I just wanted to be a part of it. I was in Tampa, Florida, and literally I was an art major in college, which I never finished. I went to Hillsborough Community College, and I was art and journalism. And well, I have to go back a little further. I started writing for the Tampa Tribune when I was 11.
Okay.
Yeah, there was my mother and my little brother and I lived in a building across the hall from a reporter named Kim Eisler. And he took me sort of kind of under his wing, and he took me into the Tampa Tribune and introduced me to everyone and showed me around how the paper was made and all that stuff. And one day when my mom was at work, I got dressed up in my best clothes, and I knew who the city editor was. I went down to the Tampa Tribune and I said, I have an appointment with Joe Registrato, which I didn't. And and they called upstairs and they were like, there's a kid down here named Alphonso King who wants to talk to you. And he's like, oh, okay, well, send him up. So I went through I don't even know what I said or whatever, but basically the argument that I laid out was that you have this newspaper, but you don't have anything for kids. Someone needs to be writing something for kids. And he was like, he left me in this conference room for about like 10 minutes, and he came back and he's like, okay. And the nickname he gave me was Big Al. I was a little kid then. And he was like, okay, Big Al, you're going to write that column. And so that's how I started writing.
In the 80s and 90s, the AIDS epidemic sort of robbed queer young people of their lives. And today, queer young people are feeling the effects of that loss as we've been robbed of a generation of elders that should still be alive today. So I know I speak for myself and like a lot of my friends when I say that we're craving that knowledge from our end. So I guess I want to know from your perspective, why is mentorship and kind of even just conversations like these within the queer community so important?
It's so important because, I mean, for me, I couldn't be the person that I am right now without all those people who pulled me aside and said, hey, you know, have you thought about this? Or, oh, don't do that. Or, you know, stay away from this person or whatever. If it wasn't for those people who saw that I needed some kind of guidance, I wouldn't have moved in the directions that I did. And going to New York, honestly and truly, the people who took me under their wings were literally the people who were in Paris is Burning. So Paris Dupree, Willie Ninja, Dorian Corey, Angie Extravaganza, Peppa LaBeija, and I ended up in the house of LaBeija. They saw that I was hungry for that knowledge, so they shared it. It's weird. When we met,
Mm-hmm.
it's, for me, it's rare that people come to me and like actually want to hear what I have to say. I'm 53. I'm about to turn 54.
Over the hill.
Yeah. Something that, well, I mean, for me, it's such a huge deal because it's something that I never thought I was going to see. When I found out that I was HIV positive, I literally thought I would be dead in a couple of years. So to actually live beyond what I thought, I didn't think I was going to see 30. So to actually be at 50 and still looking around and things are happening and I'm still doing things and and it's bizarre, but it is so important. I think the reason why I've always yearned for knowledge is my grandmother. I was raised basically by my grandmother. So I had another generation behind my mother who had all this wisdom of how to survive, how to cook for yourself, all of the, just common sense things that you need someone to tell you that, because if they don't tell you that, you just kind of wander about and you think, oh well, blah blah blah, I'm doing this thing or whatever. But like, there is something so important, and it's as simple as looking at a native tribe. The elders hold all the wisdom and all the knowledge, what it is you need to know to hunt, what it is you need to know to cook, all of those things. So, and those things have to be passed down. So when AIDS came along and wiped out a whole bunch of people, there was this big void.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you have the kids who came up without that generation. And then there's more kids that are being born right after them. So now there's this void, and then the void gets even bigger and wider.
Why is it important to celebrate Black queer history specifically?
Oh, it is very important to celebrate Black queer history because of all of the people. Literally, I have this thing called brushed with greatness. And what I mean by that is all of the people that I've gotten to meet who, like, even if I didn't know them, but I just got to meet them. I've met Madonna casually in a club.
Oh my God.
It is bizarre to think that, like, this woman, and at the time when I met her, I didn't think that she was who she was, because the last thing I saw her on at that moment was the MTV Awards, and she was dressed as Marie Antoinette. So why I thought in my head that she would be dressed that way at a club, I have no idea. And had I been paying attention to the dancers around her, I would have realized that it was her. But just that encounter of her and her coming over and going, "It's all right, honey, I'm real," because I was in shock. That's a brush.
That's what she said to you?
Yeah. It's a brush with greatness. Dorian Corey, that was the wisdom of that woman was amazing, and the stuff that she shared. And I own, well, not anymore because I just donated one of them to the archives here to Toronto, but I owned 5, or now I have 4 pieces that Dorian Corey made that I will never let go until, I'll leave them to whoever after I die. But it is so important that we know the history of the people who came before us, because we literally stand on their shoulders. So if we don't share that information, it's interesting. I worked at Cruise and Tangos for 5 years, and a bunch of young kids came through that place, and most of them had no idea how old I was. They thought because I was playing Britney and Robin and Beyonce and all of that, that I must be close to their age, but I was so much older. And watching how important everything was in their lives, and what they thought was like groundbreaking, like watching, for me, not, I love Lady Gaga, but watching her come up, I'm like, that's been done. It's all, you know, she's
Oh, watch
outside.
it, Alfonso. Watch it.
Hey, but it's true. In other aspects, that the problem I had with Lady Gaga at the time was not giving credit to where those things came from. So, you know, there were pieces of Bette Midler, there were pieces of Grace Jones, there were pieces of all these different performers before her. And, but the kids watching her thought, wow, how innovative. And she is so original. But for older people, we're like, okay, I mean, outside of the meat dress, I think that that was probably a step farther than what I would have taken it.
I'm cutting this conversation short before our relationship changes and it's no longer so convivial.
Anyway, but I mean, so it is important to realize where things come from and how they came to be. And for all the lingo and the Miss Things and the all of that stuff, you have to know where it came from. And a lot of that comes from Black and Latino culture. And it has gone mainstream. It was interesting to me when Scissor Sisters did Let's Have a Kiki. That is all ballroom lingo. And it's great that they had a hit song with it, but there was no people from the ballroom in a video for it. There was no, like, if you're going to do that kind of stuff, you need to actually include the people who were there or bring some kind of representation.
I was wondering, how do you feel about kind of the lingo, as it were, becoming mainstream? What are your thoughts on that? Like, just genuinely, no filter.
I have mixed feelings about it. It is, I remember looking a couple of years ago, whatever, I think LL Cool J was hosting a lip sync battle show or whatever.
Yeah.
And as a drag queen performer, I'm thinking, can't we have anything? It's just like now straight people are lip syncing.
Great point.
Straight people, straight celebrities, or and some gay celebrities are lip syncing and dressing up, and they're battling each other, and it's just like, wow, you know, we've been doing this for a very long time. Drag Race, blessing and a curse. It is a blessing that it has made drag so mainstream and out in the open, and you know, people, you know, younger kids are now, that's an option for them to like actually think about. And you know, some parents might have a big problem with that, but others are letting their kids be who they are. My grandmother, when she raised me, she let me be who I was. If I wanted to go in the backyard and play with pots and pans and pretend that I was cooking, I got to do that. If I wanted a truck, like a dump truck and army men, I got to do that. My grandmother wore wigs. I was the first person when the holidays came around to go sneak in her room and grab her wig and put it on and go do a little show for the relatives. No one said a word. Like, they didn't say a word to me. She wouldn't allow them to.
Right.
That was just who I was, and that's who she let me be. So I'm so grateful for my grandmother's teachings about money and how to operate and how to save and how to make a dollar stretch so you can survive, because all those things were needed over the years of going to New York, because New York is no joke. You work or you starve, and you know, it will chew you up and spit you out. And I was fortunate that I got to work. I was fortunate that I got to meet the people that I did, who led me in the different directions. You know, when I started doing television and movies, it was the perfect timing. So like Tu Wong Fu was casting, and there are so many drag queens in that movie. I'm in it, but you would need a good magnifying glass and a pause button to find me. But the only prominent scene I can tell you about is when Patrick Swayze and Wesley Snipes arrive at the club. They shot the thing at Webster Hall in New York City. I'm the gold figure. I'm in a gold mini dress at the front door, and I'm the one who ushers them in. Now, I thought I was going to be on camera because of the scene. Actually, they cut before they get across the street. But when they got across the street, I'm the person who says to them, girls, you're late. And I get them in the building, and I take them to the stairwell where they meet John Leguizamo's character, Chi-Chi. And I was so like, oh, I know I'm going to be in the movie or whatever. And when I finally got to the theater to see it, it was gone.
Oh
And
no.
I told everyone that I was in the film. So
skipping ahead a bit, I guess. I think it would be pretty impossible for us to talk about the importance of kind of Black history and Black liberation more broadly without talking about kind of the last year and I guess the global movement sparked by the murder of George Floyd, among many other kind of key moments. But I'm just wondering how those events kind of impacted your life or impacted your own activism.
Considering the week that I moved to New York City was the same week of why am I blanking on his name? Who's I just had the name, but I'm so many things are running through my head. The Rodney King beating had just happened. So coming from Florida, where Black people, for the most part, are kept in their place. And I don't, a lot of people don't understand that statement, but like they give you just enough to keep you where you're supposed to be. Now it's changed a lot. Like people are all over, and Black people they had their neighborhoods back then, but like there's vast neighborhoods now of Black people in Tampa. But back then, the way that I felt about Tampa was that you didn't have any power. Like, I remember there was some riot or something that happened when I was really young. And my grandmother, like everybody was like, well, we're just staying in, we're not going down there. But we had no power. So going to New York the week of the Rodney King beating, and seeing people march and seeing, like I was literally living in Times Square. So watching everyone board up their windows, I had never seen anything like that because they assumed that it was going to be like the riots out in California.
Right.
But it wasn't that at all. It was a peaceful march by Al Sharpton across the Brooklyn Bridge and to City Hall. I was in awe because I'd never seen Black people in groups, they had that much power that it was on the news. It was a big movement thing. So to get to George Floyd, and finally, horrible, horrible thing to watch. I've watched someone get shot before, actually twice. I've seen two people get shot. It is, I can't describe what it's like to watch someone's life leave you in a violent manner in front of you. Your own mortality is flashing before your eyes because you're thinking this person is no longer here. It is done. It is, so to watch that video of George Floyd, it really brought up all of the painful thoughts of racism from all of my years. I'm sorry.
Listen, if you want us to stop, we can stop at any time. But if you want to keep going,
yeah, I'll keep going. It just brought up a painful moment of my grandmother's life, of her getting spit on in a grocery store down in Florida in front of me. And she, just watching her thought pattern, I could see it on her face. My grandmother carried a pistol. And I know she wanted to shoot. I know she wanted to, but in that moment, she looked down at me and I could tell she's thinking, who's going to raise this child? So she had to take that. So watching George Floyd die and this cop just kind of smirking, it really brought home, like, this is where we are. That, like, the only brilliant thing about that moment is that everyone got to see it. We can, like, no one could escape it. It was everywhere, all over the internet. It was all over the news. So you had to deal with it. Whatever your issue was, whether you were racist or if you wanted to help or whatever, you had to deal with it at that moment. So it was a very, very important moment. I'm sorry that someone had to lose their life. I'm sorry for Breonna Taylor and all of the other people who had to lose their lives. Sorry.
Don't apologize.
But I just feel like it galvanized everything where we could have this conversation finally, and make people actually be accountable for what it is that they've contributed. And I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of white people really got perturbed and hated the phrase white privilege, but that's the only name that we could give it to tell you what it is that you have over us, and you've had it over us for so long. And that this cop felt that it was just, that was his right, that he was that in power. And so for the first time, we actually had, we had evidence in the Rodney King beating, but he didn't die. He didn't die from that moment. I'm surprised he didn't, the way that they went in on him. But to this one, you saw the person's life leave in that moment. It's the moment that changed everything as far as race relations and how we address each other. So I'm grateful that we had that moment. I which probably sounds terrible, but I wanted,
It doesn't.
I want,
It doesn't.
I want people to understand what it is, the fear that Black people live in, and what it's like. When I moved here to Toronto, it's a little different. Racism here is a little different. It's very interesting to me to hear people think that they're better, that Canadians are so much better than the US about racism, and that, that there is no racism here. And that sort of kind of came to the forefront with the march, with the protest at the Pride Parade 2016. That was another important moment. I'm not part of Black Lives Matters. I'm not part of any of that. I voice my opinion about stuff. I understand what I'm watching and what I see. But for me, Black Lives Matters in Canada is completely different than Black Lives Matters in the States. There are not dead bodies here on the streets every day. We haven't heard of very many lately, but I'm sure it's still going on in the States. But like, honestly, with the new president and with Trump gone and everything, I think that there is a sigh of relief, and people are thinking twice because of people are being held accountable. Not everyone, but people are losing their jobs for racist comments. People are, they're being called out online. They're being shamed, and pointed out. The woman with the Central Park thing, I'm
She
sure.
was Canadian.
Yeah. I went through a thing here in Canada with the racism thing, talking about racism, where I wanted to create spaces. It was creating the space for the HIV positive party, PosTO and Mingle, and I had another party called Daddy Issues. Those were hard enough. But creating spaces for people of color, like Black people, and having a space that's going to cater to them. A lot of the bars here, basically the attitude is, we allow you in. We don't have to cater to you. We don't have to play your music. We allow you in. Our doors are open to everybody, but you're not catering to everybody. You're catering
Right.
to a specific group, and we can either assimilate and join in, or, you know, and then the few splashes of color that are there, as far as drag performers and stuff like
Mhm.
that, they have to be basically caricatures of what Black people are in order for them to be the superstars on the scene. I'm not that kind of drag queen. So I didn't, very quickly, I got shunned and was, you know, stopped being booked for things because I wanted to do, you know, historical Black people. I wanted to do Eartha Kitt. I wanted to do Della Reese. I wanted to show those things. And we got plenty of girls who's going to do Beyonce and Rihanna and all that
Mhm.
stuff. How about those artists and bringing something else to the table? They didn't want to see it, and they didn't want to hear it.
I definitely, I obviously don't know what that experience is like, but I can empathize as a woman in the Toronto queer scene, like an analogous experience. Like it is very much we allow you to be a
Right,
part of like queer spaces or gay spaces.
right,
Um, and then I can empathize with what you're saying in terms of like we allow but we won't cater. Um,
right, right.
Listen, are you hopeful about the future of the Black liberation movement and justice?
Um, I am hopeful. I mean, getting Obama in office was like a huge moment in everyone's life. It's sad to say,
Mm,
but that was the first time I ever voted. I voted since, like I've voted every election ever since, but like that was the first time I ever voted. And, you know, I'm sure, like many, my reasonings had to do with there was a Black candidate, someone that looked like me that could represent me. And,
mm.
you know, because I saw myself in this candidate.
Finally, I know that you over pandemic started a podcast. So where can people find your podcast?
Oh, no, it's not. It's an online television show. I'm
Online
a,
television show.
yeah,
My
I'm
apologies.
one of the panelists on the show. It's not my show. I'm just one of the panelists. It's the Queer Bunch, and it's on YouTube, and we also have a Facebook page.
Awesome.
And it's like a lot. We call it an LGBT local talk show. So we try and talk about all of the issues that are going on, you know. And lately, of course, COVID has kind of dominated most of what we've done over the past year because of just dealing with it, talking about mental health, talking about the last show that we did, we actually gave advice. We got someone from a bank and someone who works in mental health to talk about how to survive after the holidays and how to, you know, just your mental and your financial health.
The next time we see you, you're going to be in full drag, Jade
Yep.
Elektra. Very excited about that. We talked a little bit kind of around Paris is Burning, but I'm really excited to like fully get into it and talk about your relationship to the people who are in that documentary.
Sure. I thank you so much for this opportunity.
Of course. Thank you.
And I hope that, you know, that your readers or listeners or viewers like enjoy the stories and even reach out. I am very social with everyone on Facebook or whatever. Facebook is probably the best place. I have Twitter and Instagram. I don't use them like everyone else.
And
I just,
would you direct people to your Alphonso King Jr. account or your like at Jade Elektra fan page?
yeah, on Facebook, if you type in Alphonso King Jr., that's ALPHONSO KING JR. It'll take you either to my Alphonso King Jade profile or my Alphonso King DJ Relentless profile, but they're both me.
Thank you so much for being so candid with me today. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I'm happy to do it. Thank you for asking me. I'm still honored and flattered.
Okay, talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.